Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.
All right. What's up, everybody? Those of you who are awake at 10 a.m., welcome back to day 2 of the Greater Reset. Everybody who's at home, thank you for tuning in. I want to say right off the bat, just so everybody understands, our first talk is in Spanish. So if you do not speak Spanish well and you want to understand, which I invite you to, you need to go check out headsets in the back of the room for those who are in person. Unfortunately, for those who are watching at home, if you don't speak Spanish, you might not understand this full presentation, but just to let you know, as with all of our talks, we post them on the Greater Reset Odyssey channel, so you will get a recording of this in Spanish and English, which is with all the talks. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but because of our lovely interpreters in the back of the room, let's give a round of applause for our interpreters doing this amazing job. If you're at home, guys, I wish you could come join us because this is just the magic watching them interpret all these talks just on the fly and making sure that our local community of Mexicans here in the beautiful city of Morelia can understand what we're communicating. It's so important to us. You know, we're really trying to build a big integrated movement of people all around the world. So that is very important to us. And now for everybody who doesn't speak Spanish, the reverse is about to happen. So again, in about 5-10 minutes, our first speaker is in Spanish. If you don't understand Spanish, you can check out a headset in the back for the first talk, and everything will be interpreted for you. And then if you don't mind after that, please do return them because they're mainly to help the Spanish speakers understand the English talks. But today is all about permaculture and food independence. Is anybody aware of what permaculture is or heard this term around various communities? We're going to talk about this for a few minutes before we get started. So yesterday was all about health, mental, physical, spiritual health. Today, permaculture, permanent agriculture, permanent culture, and food independence. Does anybody notice that, well, let's start here. Wherever you're from, during COVID 1984, did you have a local grocery store that started requiring masks and or shots to get into the market, right? That's something that many of us experience in different parts of the world. Luckily not here in Mexico for Morelia. All the beautiful big markets were open and no masks and no shots. Oh, it was such a great time. But the reality is we know that these kinds of things can happen, whether it's a claimed pandemic or anything else, right? We've also seen rising food costs with inflation, supply chain issues. There's so many things going on that affect our ability to have good, clean food. And that's not even talking about pesticides, Monsanto, the corruption within the various agencies of government that are supposed to regulate our food supplies and keep us healthy and clean. We all know that those systems aren't working. So in our movement here, the Greater Reset, the Freedom Cell Network, we're very much about activating, taking power into our hands. So if we recognize that the EPA, the FDA, the USDA, so I'm speaking about the US, but you can apply the same labels to pretty much every other nation, I would say Mexico included. We know that those agencies are not looking out for us, that they're not really protecting our food supply. And if we know we can't depend on them, then we need to take action. We can't just, or at least I believe we can't and we shouldn't just accept the current circumstances. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I'm not a parent yet, but as I move closer to the idea of potentially becoming a parent, just the reality that bringing a child into this world, especially if you live in North America where pesticides are abundant, and it's not that all over the world, but definitely in North America, you cannot bring a child into this world without being exposed to some toxins. If you're in the US, there's fluoride, there's pesticides, there's, you know, the spraying, whatever. There's so much, and it's just a very, I think, scary situation, but it's a reality we have to deal with, right? So if we understand that we live in a toxic world, and we don't want to accept that, then we need to find a way to build something better. And permaculture, I believe, is the solution, is one of the many solutions. You might have also heard terms like regenerative agriculture, There's also syntropic forestry. I mean, there's so many different schools of thoughts. Today, you're going to hear everything from herbalism. Our first speaker is going to be talking specifically about plants in Mexico, which I'm really excited for. We're going to hear later from Sarah Wu, who's coming from Costa Rica, talking about herbalism as well. We've got talks about how you can build community around permaculture and food. And I just want you guys to understand that the reason we choose these 5 themes, health, food, building parallel networks, technology, and community, building community, is because we believe if we're going to take a truly holistic approach, we need to have all of these things factored in, right? So in my mind, every single day is as important as the other. So I invite you not to skip any of the days, to really tune in and gain what you can. And so permaculture is essentially a school of thought. The way whenever I took my permaculture course with Miriam in 2020, we took it, and we're going to apply these skills to our land. The way I had it explained to me from Stephen Brooks, who is an amazing teacher who's got 4 different communities in Costa Rica, and he's been doing this for about 30 years, is that, permaculture is more of a design philosophy. Yes, it's about how you grow food, but it's also about social relationships. Some people talk about social permaculture, about the way we interact with each other, right? Really, to me, the way I understand permaculture is it's about redesigning and rethinking the way we grow our food, the way we relate to the natural world, the way we relate to the wildlife, and the way we relate to each other as human beings, right? Most of us have been brought into a world where we believe the natural world should be bent to the will of man. And that means if we need to tear up and excavate all kinds of resources and mine and put giant holes in mountains so that we can have new iPhones, well, let's do it, because that's what's best for the humans. Who cares if we destroy animal, wildlife habitats, or if it's destructive to the planet? Somebody else will deal with that in the future, right? It's a very destructive way of thinking, and it's not going to be good for the coming generations, as many of us are seeing now. Permaculture is about rethinking that and redesigning that. And instead of just coming into a piece of land and saying, let's tear it all up to build our human homes, you look at all the different ecosystems. You look at the wildlife that are there, the plants, the water. You study it during all the different seasons to see where does the water naturally flow and what happens when it rains and what happens during the summer and in the winter. And you really try to understand it and apply those principles to your design methods, to building your homes, to growing your food. And the reality, this is why it's beautiful that we're in Mexico. The reality is that permaculture is actually inspired by indigenous growing principles. And in fact, here in Mexico, there's chinampas and other growing methods that have been used for thousands of years and then have been adopted by modern permaculturists and are now being applied around the world. So as with most of the areas we're going to discuss this next few days, we already have all the solutions. Like, all the solutions exist. This is the crazy thing, is all the tools are literally in front of us. They're available to us. And some of you here have those tools. We just need to come together, use them, apply them. And as I was saying yesterday, everybody take them home, whether you're coming from the UK, you're coming from Germany. Where else we got represented? I heard Guatemala yesterday. Anywhere else? Any other? Canada? I know we got Canada. So we got quite a few people tuning in. I know we got many countries tuned in. Truly, if we all take these ideas and we go home with them, we can change the world. So I'm going to announce this one more time before I bring her on. Our first speaker is in Spanish. If you do not understand Spanish well, I'm going to give you another moment to go back to the back of the room and check out headsets with our translators. And again, I want to encourage you to please take them back when you're done so that the Spanish speakers that are coming in can understand the rest of the English talk. So again, the first talk will be in Spanish. So yeah, we're going to be focusing on permaculture, food independence. I also will mention that tonight there is an eco-village networking happening here on this stage at 6 to 8 p.m. So we'll go 10 till lunch break, 12:30, come back at 2 to 5, and then we'll resume here at 6 to 8 p.m. Has anybody here been to the eco-village networking in years past? So we got a lot of new folks. You want to come to this, especially if you're one of the people who came here because you're looking for land, you're looking for a new place to live, you've got money and you're looking for the people, or you've got the people but you're looking for the land. If you have some combination of that, show up here tonight. Everybody gets a couple minutes to come on stage and say, hey, I want to move to Mexico, I want to move to Guatemala, I want to move to wherever, this is what I have, here's my contact information, and then lots of beautiful networking happens. So that's 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. All right, thank you everybody who's joining us. Last announcement, and we're going to get started. Our first speaker is in Spanish. If you do not understand Spanish well, please go get a headset at the back of the room. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Our first speaker, I'm really excited to have her on board because, again, we want to make sure that we are respecting and integrating with the beautiful Mexican culture, and specifically with the culture of Michoacán and Morelia, this area, and we are increasingly getting more Mexican and Spanish speakers reaching out who want to share their offerings with you guys, and we're really grateful for that. And one of our first speaker here is one of those people who I've got to know a little bit over the last couple of years. She's local to this area. She's got so much knowledge to share, and she's been learning a lot just for this presentation. So please welcome Belegi Eleanor to the stage.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, everybody that is here present. Everybody has earphones? Bien, yo preparé esta plática en inglés, principalmente, pero pensé que quizá hay cosas más profundas. Pensé que quizá había muchas palabras más profundas que quería compartir en mi lengua, en mi lenguaje. Como tal, estamos buscando integrarnos como una comunidad, ¿cierto? Entonces, habrá que aprender también nuestra lengua, nuestros sonidos, nuestros cantos, para integrarnos como tal, como una familia del mundo, ¿no? Okay, well, we just get back. Oh. Se ha vuelto natural. Bueno, acabamos de regresar de un viaje del suroeste con mi pareja. Fuimos a aprender un poco de la cultura de allá, de la cultura maya, de la cultura de Oaxaca, y nos encontramos con la sorpresa, la grata sorpresa de que de aquel lado del país, de verdad la medicina naturista es muy, muy respetada. Y respetada digo porque en México tenemos la variedad como número 2 en el mundo de altas plantas medicinales. Es decir que aquí en China estamos casi a la par de la variedad que tenemos en plantas. Y desde la historia del inicio del uso de la herbolaria aquí en México ha sido una cuestión prehispánica. Es decir que muchísimo antes de la llegada de los españoles a nuestro continente, el uso de las plantas medicinales era algo normal, era algo que estaba concreto en el sincretismo de nuestro país, de nuestra cultura. Y como tal, dentro de nuestras organizaciones y ciudades había mucha gente que lo practicaba como una enseñanza de familia, es decir que había los curanderos que venían de familia que su abuelo le había enseñado al abuelo y así era, como un conocimiento heredado. Entonces, cuando volteamos a ver ciertas partes de nuestro país, nos damos cuenta que en las ciudades grandes se ha ido perdiendo por la modernización, por los nuevos conocimientos de medicina, la medicina que trabaja en pro de la farmacéutica y no en pro de la sanación del cuerpo, espíritu y mente de la persona. En cambio, en cuestión como a la medicina de la herbolaria aquí en México, ha habido como una apertura muy grande en cuanto al estudio científico y el estudio en las escuelas. Hay muchísimas universidades que se dedican a eso tal cual. Entonces, si ustedes como personas quieren venir a estudiar herbolaria en México, hay muchos institutos, hay escuelas de herbolaria, hay escuelas de partería, hay escuelas para fitoterapia y son muy reconocidas. Entonces, aquí en México hay una cuestión que es el uso de las tradiciones y hay una ley que protege las tradiciones en México. Entonces, tenemos esa como ventaja de poder decir, somos una comunidad de la gente que practica esta medicina, que está protegida y que está apoyada por ciertas instituciones de estudiosos, de ciertos sitios de gobierno. Entonces, ahora que fuimos al sur, les comentaba, nos encontramos con que hay muchos abuelos mayas que siguen practicando, porque en esa zona está una de las variedades más grandes que hay de plantas medicinales en nuestro país, dado que ahí todavía hay mucha cuestión de la jungla, la selva natural de esa parte, casi pegada a Guatemala. La imagen que les presento aquí es el primer documento, pues sí, el primer documento como reconocido de plantas medicinales en México, que es el Código Abadiano, que fue como descrito de una manera muy curiosa. Decían los españoles, es que son brujos, es que hacen como mezclas extrañas de tierras y cosas así. Bueno, no sé ustedes, pero lo seguimos haciendo, ¿no? Nos ponemos barro en la cara, nos gusta quemar cosas y olerlas. Es como algo bien que viene con nosotros, algo que está dentro del ser humano. El hecho de querer conectar con las plantas. Y siento que el hecho de querer conectar con las plantas nos hace conectar también con el sentir, con el hecho de saber que todos somos uno como parte de este mundo. Ahora, en la medicina ancestral, por así decirlo, se consideran varios dioses de la medicina. Entre ellos está una que me encanta, que es la diosa Ixchel, que es la diosa maya, de la fertilidad, del parto, de la salud y del amor y de las flores. A esta diosa se le considera como dadora de vida, ya que representa las fases de la luna también. Este otro es el dios de la medicina, también es masculino, Ixtiltol, algo así, es un poco complicado su nombre, pero también se representa como una persona que está brindando. Este es un objeto que usa para ver, el que porta en su mano. El que tiene a un lado es un saco que porta para la medicina. Ahora, acá en México nosotros como una de las tradiciones que más hemos compartido y a lo largo también siento que de toda Latinoamérica, está la medicina del temazcal, que está muy relacionada con los elementos. Se trabajan los elementos en conjunto para lograr llegar a la parte más profunda del ser humano a través de la respiración. En esta ceremonia de temazcal, por así decirlo, también se utilizan muchas plantas medicinales, dependiendo la intención. El temazcal se puede emplear para preparación para el parto, para sanación de traumas, para sanación de adicciones, o simplemente para una desintoxicación que necesitamos a veces de cuerpo y alma. ¿Quién no la necesita a veces, verdad? Y qué mejor que hacerlo en un lugar que es como el vientre de la madre. ¿Alguien ha hecho temazcal? Sí, qué bonito. Siempre es como volver a estar así chiquitos, ¿no? Nos hacemos chiquitos, nos ponemos húmedos, estamos ahí con calorcito, volviendo a estar chiquitos, ¿no? El temazcal siempre nos va a recordar, siento, que depende mucho de cada quien el trabajo que tiene y que somos así, somos pequeñitos en un mundo al que salimos que es muy grande. Ahora, acá les presento algunas de las imágenes de como las plantas más representativas o como de esa zona a la que fuimos a visitar, y otra que es la pasiflora, que es una planta bien bella que contiene muchas enzimas y muchas sustancias relacionadas con el sistema nervioso y que lo que hace es crear una sensación de tranquilidad, de relajación y bueno, es como, yo las plantas las veo como que tienen su espíritu cada una, entonces este es como un abracito. Este es la planta que está a un lado, se llama achiote y es digestiva, es antiinflamatoria, pero se usa mucho en la cocina, que eso es otra de las cosas bien bonitas de la medicina de México, que no solo se usan para una específica cuestión de salud, sino que se emplean mucho en la comida, para dar sabor, para aportar olores y cosas así. Esta es la chaya, que es un árbol que crece casi en todos lados en el mundo, digo aquí en México, y esta aporta muchísimo hierro y es súper buena para el estómago. Ahora de este lado tenemos plantas que pues yo he tenido la suerte de conocer, recolectar por mí misma. Esta es la espinosilla, es una planta que crece pequeñita durante la época de otoño y empieza a elongar sus hojas hacia arriba, creando una flor muy bella que es roja. Esta planta contiene muchos flavonoides, contiene muchísima, ¿cómo se llama? El que nos ayuda a crecer las uñas, el cabello, es la nonina, creo que es la nonina, sí. También tenemos la bugambilia, que es una planta que se encuentra casi en todas las ciudades de aquí de México. Es muy ornamental, es muy bonita y esta lo que hace es vitamina C, poderoso expectorante también. Tenemos la justicia espiguera, que es súper bella porque contiene un alto contenido de hierro y favorece la absorción del mismo hierro. Entonces nos ayuda muchísimo a combatir problemas relacionados con enfermedades de transmisión sexual y sistema inmune, problemas de anemia. Luego acá está esta que es súper interesante, la primera de este lado para allá, que es la hierba del sapo. También se conoce en el mundo como toothgrass. Y esa es muy buena para la limpieza de riñones, vías urinarias, hígado y para aportar hierro en la sangre y oxigenación. Muy bien. Eso es como en relación al camino que hemos estado haciendo de estudio de plantas. Realmente tomaría muchísimo tiempo poder como comentarles de las plantas que hemos estado aprendiendo a lo largo de estos años, porque son muchísimas. Igual quien guste puede acercarse con nosotros y sí les podemos compartir más cursos específicos. Ahora me gustaría invitar a Orión, mi dualidad. Y hemos estado trabajando juntos el último año y pues ha sido un largo camino de aprendizaje mutuo. Orión se dedica a justamente recuperación de la medicina tradicional mexicana en todos los aspectos. Él es lo que llamaban curandero, un healer. Entonces lo que él hace es una sanación de cuerpo, mente, espíritu, porque como les comentaba, para los mayas, para la gente de antes, las enfermedades bajaban de un plano distinto, que podía ser el plano físico, el plano espiritual o un plano divino. Es decir, que tu enfermedad podía venir de una caída, de un susto, podía venir heredada por alguna familia o te habían hecho como brujería. Que eso es algo muy común y que a veces no creemos, pero nos hacemos una limpia, meditamos o así, y eso es como lo que ellos consideraban la brujería, aquello que no debe estar dentro de nosotros, que viene del mundo exterior. Entonces, bienvenido, Orión.
Buenos días, good day everyone. Vamos a mantenerlo en español para que sea más sencillo. ¿Está bien? Ahí está, gracias, buenos días. El trabajo que realizamos aquí es para preservar la tradición oral y médica de los pueblos originarios. Hemos podido aprender con comunidades tanto mazahuas, purépechas, comcac, mayas, tepehuanos, amazónicos, cofanes. La medicina es para todos y algo que hemos podido aprender con este gran evento, el Great Reset, es comprender que el saber es para todos y el saber verdadero es el que nos va a liberar, el que va a hacer que podamos volver a las raíces de una buena humanidad y una buena comunidad en nuestras ciudades, con nuestras familias y sobre todo con nosotros mismos. Me decía muy bien Bele, hay veces que la enfermedad entra por un mal pensamiento, un mal aire, una mala comida, una mala intención. Entonces lo que nosotros hacemos con las plantas es poder que sean nuestras aliadas y ahora sí empezar a curarnos el mal que tengamos. Todas las enfermedades tienen cura, la que sea. Hemos podido tratar casos comprobados y curados de cáncer, Alzheimer, trombosis, VIH, COVID. Me he cansado de sacar esa madre, porque ahorita todo lo que hemos hecho es siempre para restablecer la salud, pero sobre todo el espíritu de la persona. Porque si tienes su mente clara y su espíritu conectado, no va a haber lugar para que se puedan enfermar. Entonces, pues sin más que decirles, los invitamos a que se acerquen al stand, que pasen a preguntarnos cualquier duda que tengan y con mucho gusto les vamos a poder atender. Vamos, varios.
Gracias, Orión. Acá les compartimos otra de las cosas que hacemos aquí como comunidad, como trabajadores para la comunidad aquí en Michoacán. Yo me dedico también a la apicultura, al cuidado de las abejas, a la preservación de las abejas de un modo amable, es decir, que yo les sirvo a ellas no me sirven a mí. Yo empecé a ser apicultora en el sentido, quería hacer negocio, quería dedicarme a vender, pero durante el tiempo que lo estuve haciendo me di cuenta que era más importante dejarles a ellas lo que tienen y hacerlas crecer, porque al final de cuentas yo puedo vivir sin miel, pero no puedo vivir sin respirar, y por las abejas respiramos. Ahora, acá tenemos una problemática súper grande en el país, sobre todo aquí en el estado de Michoacán, que es los incendios forestales. Eso ha diezmado muchísimo la cantidad de árboles que hay, ha causado una muerte increíble de fauna y flora. Entonces nosotros hace 5 años, quizá más, sí, mucho más, comenzamos a hacer una brigada de antiincendios aquí en Morelia, que lleva activa pues desde entonces, y empezamos como con 5 personas, ahora somos una comunidad de más de 20 personas que trabajan activa o pasivamente en la preservación y el cuidado de los bosques aquí en Michoacán. Hemos hecho revuelo, hemos hecho problemática en contra de instituciones que no quieren responder a eso, y hemos hecho un llamado muchísimo a la población para que haga algo en esto, y ha habido una respuesta. Entonces, esa es todas las cosas que hacemos. Orión es el capitán de la brigada también. Y esa es nuestra misión y visión. Nuestro proyecto Herbal Bees es ese proyecto, un proyecto que busca el bienestar para todos, porque justamente el bienestar es para todos. Para todos me refiero a la naturaleza, a los animales, a los elementos, nosotros mismos como humanos, porque somos parte de todo, ¿no? Entonces, me gustaría, relacionado a eso, contarles una pequeña historia que mi papá me solía contar todo el tiempo, que es una historia pequeñita y habla de un día en que se hizo una gran fiesta en el mundo, una fiesta a la que asistieron muchos elementos, a los que asistieron muchos animales. Y estaba el abuelo Fuego y le dijo a todos, traigan a los árboles y traigan a las flores y traigan a las frutas y traigan a todos los animales. Y fueron todos, y los venados fueron a invitar a todos, y iban corriendo, iban trayendo a todos. Llegó el día de la fiesta y se habían olvidado de alguien muy importante que los estaba viendo desde allá arriba. Y era la señora Lluvia, la madre Lluvia, y los miraba y decía, ¿cómo es posible que no me hayan podido invitar? Se olvidaron de mí, se olvidaron del agua. Entonces dijo, bueno, ahora que se han olvidado de mí, yo ya no voy a acudir, ya no voy a ir con ellos y ya no voy a darles nada. Entonces pasaron los meses y pasaron más meses y llegó la sequía y ya no había agua. Y entonces todos estaban asustados y ajetreados y decía el abuelo Fuego, ¿qué pasó? ¿Que no invitaron a la señora Lluvia a la fiesta? Y dijeron los venados, oh no, olvidamos invitarla. ¿Y ahora qué vamos a hacer? ¿Y ahora qué vamos a hacer? Y entonces dijo un venado muy valiente y muy hermoso, se levantó y dijo, yo voy a ir, yo voy a convencerla de que regrese. Y le dijo el abuelo Fuego, adelante, vaya. Y entonces iba el venado corriendo por el monte. Pim, 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 pim. Y llegó con la señora Lluvia y le dijo, señora Lluvia, le propongo algo. Si yo le gano una carrera, usted regresa con nosotros. Y la señora Lluvia volteó y le dijo, oh, pequeño venadito, está bien, lo haré. Y entonces va, ¿no? Y en cuanto el venado está listo para salir corriendo, ¡pum!, la lluvia ya había llegado. ¿Ya había llegado? ¿Ya? Y el venado dijo, y abuelo Fuego, no puede hacerlo, no puede hacerlo. Y dijo el abuelo Fuego, si tú, que eres el más veloz y el más hermoso de mis animales, no pudiste, nadie más va a poder hacerlo. Pero entonces de debajo de una roca, una pequeña vocecita salió. ¡Crack! ¡Crack! Yo voy a hacerlo. ¿Y quién creerá? Era la ranita. Una pequeña ranita que saltó de detrás de una roca y salió y le dijo al Señor del Fuego: yo lo haré, yo voy a ir por la lluvia. Y el Señor del Fuego, resignado, le dijo: bueno, adelante, vaya y hágalo. Y ahí fue la ranita, saltando, de piedra en piedra, así pequeñita. Llega con la señora lluvia y le dice: señora lluvia, le propongo un trato. Si yo le gano una carrera, usted regresa con nosotros. Y la señora lluvia, todavía más divertida, volteó y le dijo: está bien. Y cuando empezó la señora lluvia a ir así por el cielo, de repente vio que la ranita ya había saltado por ella. Y entonces se fue a perseguirla por allá. Y otra ranita había saltado por allá y se fue para allá. Y así, y de pronto estaba tan confundida porque veía a una saltando allá y otra saltando allá, todas iguales y todas coordinadas y no sabían quién era. Y entonces cuando llegó a la comunidad, la ranita ya había llegado ahí. Y la señora lluvia le dijo: ¿cómo hiciste esto posible? Y entonces un montón de ranitas salieron de todos lados y dijeron: no importa qué tan pequeñas seamos, ni qué tan lejos estemos las unas de los otros, si tenemos una idea en común, podemos incluso defender o vencer al más grande enemigo. Y ese es el mensaje que nos gustaría compartir con todos ustedes. Somos pequeñas células alrededor de todo el mundo, esparcidas y en cada uno en su lugar, pero todos tenemos una idea, que es crear un mejor mundo para todos, para los que vienen y para que vivamos bien. Entonces, pues, gracias, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí, por sentarse a escuchar, por querer escucharla en español. Eso lo aprecio mucho, porque hay palabras que me gustan más emplearlas en español. Y eso es todo. Orión nos va a compartir un ícaro, que es un canto de los abuelos que se usa justamente para curar a las personas. Entonces, gracias.
Buenos días, buenos días. Este es un pequeño ícaro de protección para todos los asistentes aquí al Great Reset y se lo puedan llevar a su casa, a su familia. Con el ícaro lo que buscamos hacer es sacar cualquier mal pensamiento o cualquier mal espíritu dentro de la persona. Este es el ícaro de la arcana, para que puedan en sus sueños estar bien y estar bien con ustedes mismos. Entonces los invito por favor a que respiren, que cierren los ojos y que se relajen tantito, ¿está bien? Vamos a sentarnos por acá y vamos a comenzar. ¿Te quieres sentar acá arriba? Yo me voy a poner acá. No, acá me siento. Está bien, bonito el altar, ¿eh? Está chingón.
You can take it off the earphones because he's gonna speak. He's gonna sing here just like that. No earphones. That the big spirit bless everybody and can go back everywhere you're coming and everywhere you could go with the health, clarity in the mind, and happiness in the heart. Thank you.
Some noise for both of them. Let's make some noise, please. Thank you. All right. Okay, now we're going to take a brief moment before we bring up our next speaker, because again, those of you who just checked out headsets to hear Spanish and English, please get those back so our Spanish speakers can hear the rest of the talks. Thank you guys for that. And as I was mentioning, for those of you who got here a little late, it's really important for us to have more and more Spanish content as part of the Greater Reset. So you can expect for future events, and even later this week, there will be more Spanish talks. You know, I get invited, I'm just going to tell a brief story while you guys do that. And if you guys don't mind keeping it down in the back of the room while you put your headsets back. I get invited to speak at a lot of events in different parts of the world. And that's Mexico, Costa Rica, and other places where English is not the native language. And unfortunately, a lot of event organizers don't make any effort to integrate with the local community or to invite the local community. But for us, that's something that's very important. That's why we do the Spanish translation. That's why we're working with the We Are Not Zombies team from Mexico City, which we're very grateful for. Obviously, you know, we have local Mexican vendors, we have local Mexican speakers, and that's important to us. So it's not by accident that the content is going to be more and more in Spanish. We will, of course, still have English content, but we want to invite all of you who are coming here to learn as much Spanish as you can, to make an effort, because as you might notice, the local folks appreciate you putting some effort into speaking Spanish, but they also might want to try to learn English with you as well. So we get to learn together, and it's a beautiful process. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and as everybody gets their headsets back, we're going to continue with our next speaker, who is a really good friend of mine, who I've got to know, it's been like a decade now, and we've been together at events in the forests of Arizona and different parts of Mexico and all over the US, and he's somebody who has a lot of different knowledge, and he could probably speak on every single one of the days we have today. But we wanted to bring him to talk this time about, of course, permaculture, food independence, and his experience with that. So he's going to give you guys lots of knowledge. Please welcome my buddy, Kenny Palorentano, to the stage.
Hello, beautiful humans. Thank you all for being here, for being on the screen, or if you're not here with us, tuning in. Invite everyone to just take a moment and take a breath and just notice where you're at. That was a powerful experience that just happened. You're in this swirl of probably a new place, or at least you probably just got here for this trip, and just be with yourself for a second. Notice what your body's feeling. Notice if you're energized, if you're tired. No need to judge it or change it, just taking that moment for ourselves. This is a super important part of living in a healthy, free way. Just if you don't know where you're at, then it's really easy to get caught off guard by things. Emotions come up and you don't realize that those emotions were already there an hour ago. They were below the surface. So my talk today is called You Are What and How You Eat. So we're going to cover a variety of different angles on this, but to start, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the idea that our cells replace themselves, constantly, and about every 7 years, our whole body has been replaced. Which is kind of wild to think about, that we're reborn in a physical sense every 7 years. And those things that your body's, the new cells coming and everything else that the body's creating, the neurochemicals, the digestive enzymes, all of this is coming from what we're eating, what we're drinking, what we're taking in. It's not like the body just manifests things out of thin air. It converts this chemical into that chemical. So by having deficiencies in things, by eating too much of something, there's so much that can shift about your whole body, and we don't even notice it necessarily. So I have been on a healing myself through food journey for about 12 years now. Before that, I ate what you would call the standard American diet, right? Meat, cheese, bread mostly, a little bit of salad sometimes. And it's not that that was the only part. I was also poisoning myself with alcohol, poisoning myself with various drugs. All the intake was low quality, it wasn't working for me. And I kept doing it because it was the normal thing. Everybody I knew, we'd get off work, we'd go to the bar, we'd eat a burger and have some beers. We'd, get done there, go hang out with the friends, end up drinking a bottle and doing a couple lines of Coke. And then I wondered why I always felt terrible. Like, couldn't sleep well, head was foggy most of the time. Digestion didn't work for like 15 years straight. And then slowly, the first thing that actually happened was I got a job at a distribution company, and one of our products was kombucha. I had never heard of kombucha before. And we had cases and cases of it in our warehouse. And so they would start to, hit their dates, and I would just get a free case of kombucha. And so I started drinking kombucha every single day. And after about a month and a half of that, everything in my body was feeling different from what it ever had before. And then I started going down a lot of rabbit holes around GMOs and glyphosate and the poisons that are being fed to people all around the world very intentionally, as well as just a lot of the vitamins and the minerals and the idea of the essential amino acids. There's 9 essential amino acids that our body needs to produce all the proteins and other amino acids that it needs. There's dozens that it can produce as long as it has those 9. I'd never heard any of that. So over the course of about a year and a half, 2 years, I started shifting. I was like, okay, I'm gonna not eat anything GMO. I'm gonna not eat anything highly processed. I'm gonna not, just clearing out as much as I could. And once I started removing the poison and started being able to listen to my body, I started to notice all these things that I was like allergic to or that just really didn't work for me. And it's like, oh, that feeling that I thought was normal actually only happens when I eat walnuts. Oh, that feeling that I thought was normal only happens when I eat dairy. And this is gonna be very different for everyone. Obviously, we have different bodies, we have different chemical makeups, but the practice, like that concept of cut out the poison, listen to your body, and you need a little bit of time in between because the body tends towards homeostasis. It wants what it has, it wants the same. Our gut is a huge part of our experience. Most people don't know that the gut has neurons. The heart has neurons, the gut has neurons. It's not just the brain. People think that all of our brain activity, all of our thoughts are from the brain. This is maybe like the screen that we're looking at, but the computer is the whole thing. And so our gut, those neurons are sending signals of what we want, what we need. These signals they're based on what you're already doing. There's billions of microorganisms in our gut biome at any time, and they have cravings. They have chemicals that they need. They have their own will to live, and they can send signals to little buttons that make you think you want something. So it's really crazy the level of this that you start to notice when you cut out things that you crave, like the things that are, your really difficult comfort food or whatever, and you notice those cravings come up, and then usually it's 60 to 90 days of making a shift where the microbiome has started to really change. So if that's cutting out cane sugar or cutting out dairy or cutting out, whatever the thing is, after 2 to 3 months, the environment has shifted and the signals change. So if you've heard of Penn Jillette, Penn and Teller, cool libertarian comic magician guys, he went vegan for, his daughter told him he needed to for health reasons because he was having heart problems and stuff. And he made a big deal of it for a while there that he was an unethical vegan. He wanted to make it very clear he didn't give a damn about the animals, he was just doing it for his health. And then, about, it was 80 days after, his gut biome changed. And all the things that craved dead animals were gone. And suddenly he flipped. And if you go look at his Joe Rogan appearance from a few years ago, he goes really deep into this whole story. And I just thought it was beautiful the way that he was very adamantly not caring, just taking care of himself. Penn Jillette and Penn and Teller, yeah. But that shift will happen with anything. Most people are eating cane sugar all the time. Even if you don't buy cane sugar, even if you don't actually use it yourself, it's in probably all of the bread, all of the crackers, all the cheese, like so many things that you're eating, unless you're doing whole food already, in which case you're fine. Like if you're if you're already eating just fresh whole foods that you're preparing for yourself, then most of what I'm saying. So I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 10 years now, but what I teach, what I talk about is much more just that mindful eating, right? There's also so many other steps or so many other facets to what we're eating besides just the physical part for us. You look at the money. Where are you buying the food? And so who's that supporting? Where are they getting the food? Are you buying for your food from Walmart? Okay, well, you know where that money's going. Are you buying organic food from Walmart? Maybe that's a slightly different place from the General Mills at Walmart. But if you're going to a farmer's market and you're putting money in the hands of a person who actually grew the food, there's so many ways that we can help free ourselves and our communities from the financial ties of things by being really conscious with what and how we're eating as well. And that range of financial, physical, obviously for some people there's the spiritual or karma or any of those elements. The environmental, I'm not a climate change is going to rend the world kind of person. I don't, most of it's IPCC nonsense to push depopulation. But obviously, there are plenty of things that are being done by corporations, governments, and individuals that are not good. Like we shouldn't be dumping toxic chemicals into the water. We shouldn't be dumping plastic into the water. We shouldn't be spraying Roundup on the plants, salting the earth basically, killing all of the soil. And so when we choose where we're spending our money on our food, we're helping, in our little way, either feed or not feed. Like, we're choosing which wolf to feed. And that feels good, I think. Like to me, like knowing that I'm not buying stuff that I will go hungry generally for days rather than eat stuff that I don't consider to be food or give my money to some place that I just know it's not good. And that choosing to live in alignment with our principles, whatever your principles are. And if you don't know, the word principle comes from principia. It's to come first, that which comes first. Like your principles, it's different from values. Values is just all the things. Principles are the things that always have to come first. So for me, that's non-aggression, respect for consent. Your principles, if you're living in alignment with them, regardless of how they match up to other people, life's going to be pretty great. You're going to feel good. Think opportunities are going to be coming in that match. And when we're not, that doesn't feel very good in the head, but the body is going to be responding to that as well. If we're taking in just physical experiences, mental experiences that feel bad, that cause stress hormones to release, that stress our body out, that's going to have a physical impact. And then on the same side, if we're eating physical stuff, if we're eating things that we know aren't good for us, that's going to have an impact not only on our bodies, but then on our mind. How our brain functions, how we sleep, all of this is going to change as well. And so one thing I like to look at with, again, I try not to really proselytize the vegan thing so much as mindfulness and living in alignment with your principles. But one of the reasons I think that animal products are pushed so much in modern culture is because if you look at the work of folks like Dr. Emoto and many others, we see water takes imprints of vibration very well. It holds a charge. And flesh is mostly water. Humans are 60% water. Well, it's the same for cows and pigs and all that. We're mostly water. So when animals are being raised, that meat, that milk, all that stuff is being programmed with usually captivity, torture, separation from family, and then they feed that to the people en masse and literally eat those vibrations. This doesn't apply the same to someone who hunts a wild animal. Obviously that animal's vibrations are very different. It's living in freedom. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Not making either one right or wrong. I'm not trying to play that game. But just in that sense of what we're taking in isn't just the chemicals. There's those unseen levels too. And I guess that moves to the how we eat part. Do you sit down and maybe with friends or family or even just by yourself and sit quietly and focus on your food and you're having a meal? Or are you sitting in front of the TV, something's going on, checking your phone every now and then, just the eating's just happening, right? Are you actually present with your food? Are you taking the time to chew it? If you want an interesting statistic, I don't remember the number, just go look up how many people die every year from choking on their food. It's a serious thing. And for digestive issues as well, there's so many things that need to be broken down very thoroughly before our gut can really do much to them. The raisins and corn and things that kind of come out the other side looking the same unless you masticate them very thoroughly. Are you stopping to give gratitude for your food before you eat it? Right? It doesn't have to be a religious or a spiritual thing at all. There are actual people who grew and picked that food. There's actual bugs and animals that helped till the soil. You don't have to go anywhere outside of the purely observable to see, wow, I need to give thanks to so many beings, to the sun and all that energy, to the rain falling, so that I can eat this one slice of an apple, so that I can eat, whatever it is. And then taking that time, one, it helps with our digestion. Just eating slower is great. We tend to eat less when we're eating slower as well because the body catches up. But that's giving us time with our body again. We're stopping, we're slowing down, we're checking in. And I, personally my understanding of the universe, which might be wrong, is that everything is basically vibration. The physical is, at best manifestation of that. Really, it's just vibrations that seem solid to us. But so what we're holding as our vibration, the energy, the thoughts that we're focusing on is what's pulling our experiences around us. The law of attraction says that which is like unto itself is drawn. If you hold yourself in gratitude, more experiences to be grateful for are gonna come. From a simply neurological standpoint, and more scientific, less woo-woo, brains run on mostly confirmation bias. The things you expect, the things you believe, the things you're looking for is what you're gonna notice, and the things that you don't or the things that your brain has decided are unimportant, you won't notice. Easy example of this is, you go to a cow town, you notice that smell, after a couple days you don't notice the smell anymore. It's still there, your brain just turns it off. Or if there's some type of car that you've never really noticed, and then somebody shows you one because they're really excited about it, and then you see that car on the road all the time. It doesn't have to be anything woo-woo about it. What you are telling yourself up here very much decides what you're seeing out here, because there's so much data all the time, and the brain is filtering through all of those biases that you have, all those beliefs, all that programming. And I think there's feedback loops there for sure with the brain chemicals that come from different foods, or the shortages in certain chemicals that come from certain diets. And so it's one of those things where maybe you've tried for a long time to get out of this kind of depression or anxiety or whatever, but if you don't go to the purely what fuel am I feeding my body, you might not be able to make the change because it's actually partially from chemicals. You keep eating this every night and that drops this into your brain and that makes you feel sad in the morning. Or, there's so many different ways that things can happen. Or just not getting enough B12. Not getting, there's so many ways that our diets can change everything about our experience. And yeah. So on the more, the permaculture side, the food independence side, taking this step a step farther, the dream would be you just grow your own food, right? For me, it's a village, 20 to 60 people, and we've got a food forest all around us where we've made little maps of which trails we planted which native foods on just to help rebuild the forest, and then a couple greenhouses and mushroom cellars. And the beauty of growing your own food, or when you know the person that grows your own food, is that vibration, that intention being programmed into things starts with the seed. When I plant seeds, I was taught this years ago, it's like one at a time, getting down and giving thanks and prayer. Again, not in a religious sense, but just knowing and saying and making it so. This plant is going to have a beautiful life, it's going to feed and nourish so many, and that, there's no studies for that sort of thing or anything, but I can taste the difference. Definitely when I'm cooking for an event and there's food that was bought at the store and then a bunch of food that somebody brought from their farm, people who aren't told can usually taste some difference as well. And it's I'm making all of it, it's all to the same standard, but they can tell. I don't know what that is per se, but if I believe that it's a thing, if I observe it, then it's gonna keep happening. It's gonna have that effect on me. If you go to a restaurant and the person making your food looks really pissed off and they're grumbling and they don't wanna be there, maybe that's not what you wanna eat. At the same time, sometimes I'll stop myself from cooking because I'm I'm too much in my head and there's something going on and I just need to go out and sit in the grass instead, so that I don't put that into, I'm not aggressively stirring and putting that into my food so that I then recycle it back into myself again. The world is built of feedback loops. Most of it's feedback loops. The way you treat people is the way that they end up treating you, and then you do that, or the way you eat tells your body what it's craving, so then you eat more of that stuff. Most things are feedback loops. And so by making small changes, we can make such a drastic change down the road, because that small change will keep gaining momentum as well. How many of you have tried the sapote negra, the black sapote? Tiny percent. Okay. If you're watching online, it'll be tougher. If you're here, make sure you get a sapote negra while you're in town. They're a chocolate pudding fruit. It's amazing, or like a nectarine. Yeah. Yeah. You just wait until they're nice and soft, tear them open. Mind blowing. Yeah, exactly. If you try to eat them too early, they turn your mouth all funny, just like a persimmon. Yeah. But yeah, that's probably my favorite fruit on the planet. Sort of not related to the talk, but sort of, because it's food. And you can eat it joyfully, because it's pudding in a skin. You just tear it open and it's pudding. And I think that's part of the beauty of fruit in general. There's so many people that go to the fruitarian diet, and I won't say good, bad, whatever about that, but when your food is fun, like peeling a banana, picking the seeds out of a pomegranate, or just having a colorful plate of a bunch of sliced up things, there's joy in that, and that makes us feel better as we're eating it. Plus, fruit is one of the most alive foods there is. Fruit and seeds are the things that literally just fall off the tree to continue life forward. With carrots, we're digging them out of the ground, and people that are anti-vegan say, well, you're still killing the plants. And with those sorts of things, but with fruit, no, the tree actively created that apple so that some animal would eat it to take the seeds and poop them somewhere. That is its whole purpose. And the fact that they're all, most of them, so brightly colored and such a variety of flavors and all of that is just, it's wild. and then the number of things like candies that they make and gums that they make that are just an artificial laboratory version of the flavor of some fruit. Like if you've had jackfruit, or jacca down here, the jackfruit terpenes, the taste of the jackfruit, is what they use for juicy fruit gum. Originally, decades ago, it was the actual chemical from the actual plant, and then they made a laboratory version. But it's like, just like in the pharmaceutical industry, most of the drugs that they make, it's a laboratory version, so they can patent it, of something they got from a plant. And often they don't work as well because they try to identify the single chemical. With food as your medicine, so yeah, the Hippocratic Oath. Most everybody knows the first line, first do no harm. The second is let thy medicine be thy food and thy food be thy medicine. Obviously in the Rockefeller medicine world, nutrition is almost completely left out. For an MD, they take, I think it's 1, 2, or 3 hour course in nutrition, which is probably the most important facet of human health. But that's why it falls on us then to learn that stuff for ourselves. And for so much of the world, even if you're not listening to the doctor, you go listen to this person, that person, this blogger, whoever, if they're telling you a very specific diet, it may or may not work for you, right? Like, the idea for me is just, cut out the poison, detox, trust your body. And then you can look at things and say, okay, this person's diet is, maybe it's Dr. Sebi in the mucus list. Maybe it's, whatever, you can look at them and say, oh, I feel some of these symptoms, maybe I should add some of those things. Or I feel some of those, maybe I should cut out this thing and see what happens. But nobody out there has made a diet that's perfect for your body unless they designed it with you for you, because your body's different from everybody else's. There's a really great little book, Michael Pollan. You probably know him from In Defense of Food, Omnivore's Dilemma, a bunch of great documentaries. He did the psychedelics one recently, Changing Your Mind, or How to Change Your Mind. He has a book that I've given to a lot of people who are just kind of trying to make the shifts in their diet called Food Rules. Tiny little book. It's 3 rules and then a handful of questions to ask for each one to see if what you're looking at matches up with the rules. And the 3 rules are just eat food, so not the crazy chemicals, not the artificial sweetener, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. And at the same time, there is a piece, right, I feel like I have to say, supplementation is almost necessary in our modern world unless you have your own permaculture garden going and stuff, because things like cobalt and there's so many things that have been drastically reduced in our soil that eating even stuff right out of the ground that was grown organically, naturally on its own, isn't necessarily going to provide what it did 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Yeah, so that's a huge thing to take into account, is like, even if you're eating the most well-balanced, perfect diet for your body, like, you're probably going to need to have some supplements around, at least to hit them when you need it. If I start to get allergy symptoms of any kind somewhere, it just means I need some zinc, and I'm good. If I start to feel bloating in my hands and like in my skin at all, puffiness like that, it always just means that I need like spirulina chlorella. I need like the dark greens. That doesn't mean that those will mean anything to your body, but there's gonna be little things, little tricks you can do, and there's some things that are just so much easier to get from a powdered dried berry instead of eating 2 pounds of that berry, or a zinc supplement versus having to eat an extra pound of sunflower seeds every day or something. Yeah, I think my time is just about up, and okay, no, we'll keep going. Okay, the opposite. Yeah, so if you don't know, there's also a huge issue. Like I said, there's the food being poisoned, which I'm not trying to be dramatic about that, but like GMOs, all the glyphosate and the PCBs and oh, I mean, just so much crazy stuff, never mind the aspartame. And I mean, there's so much that's put out that isn't food in any way. You know, the fried everything. And there's also, you know, what we're taking in through the air. There's the chemtrails or the aerial spraying, the geoengineering that happens, heavy metals raining down, heavy metals in a lot of the water supplies, these sorts of things. So there's a very much an element of you can be healing your body all the time. You can be helping it clear of that other stuff through what you're eating. So like spirulina, chlorella, and cilantro are some of the best things for helping get heavy metals out of the body. Cilantro is actually so good at breaking them loose from the fat cells that you have to take it with spirulina or chlorella or something, or it can give you a Herxheimer's reaction. That's where you do something that breaks toxins loose, but you don't get them all sucked out of the body, and then you end up getting sick from it. That's just why they always, when you get a massage or something, they tell you to drink lots of water, because by doing that work, you're breaking loose all sorts of toxins, and if you don't move them through, then now they're in the bloodstream and you get a sick feeling for a day or two. So, you know, by having like guacamole with a bunch of cilantro and some spirulina in it, or throwing those things in your smoothie, or, you know, that right there can do so much work to get rid of one of the main issues we have of them spraying us with poison and stuff. Like, and there's so many, you know, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, easily on different issues, different diseases, different deficiencies, how to deal with them, all that stuff. And most anywhere in the world, there's going to be plants that grow well, that you can grow on your land, that are going to help with this stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to stop there, have Derek come back up here, move on to our next guest. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, make some noise for Kenny. All right. How's everybody feeling? Feeling good? We got 2 powerful presentations so far. We got another one coming up that I'm really excited about. Before we get to that, just want to do a couple of housekeeping, and want to mention again that if you are here in person, the best way to keep up with workshops, spontaneous potlucks and parties and meetups is through the Telegram chats, either our official Greater Reset Activation Telegram channel. There's also a channel for carpooling, housing, organizing. If you need any help with that, come see one of us and we can get you connected, because there's a lot of things going on there. And now we're going to hear from one of our sponsors.
Yeah, hey guys. I just wanted to mention that we've got our Above Phone booth back there, and we have a bunch of awesome phones for you that have been made readily available and a really deep discount. And then what we're going to do for people, if you already have an Above Phone or you're going to get one this week, we're going to have a workshop the Monday after the event where we're all going to get together and set them up. So it's going to be a much nicer way to get eased into it. The Above Phone is a complete privacy phone solution. Thanks, Derek, for those of you who didn't know. And I'm sure you'll see an ad later on showing you everything it can do. So yeah, pleasure.
All right. Yeah, Hakeem sometimes doesn't pump himself up enough. Him and his company are bringing de-Googled privacy phones into our community, which has been a huge missing piece the last few years. So big round of applause for their efforts. And I also want to mention that one of our other sponsors is the Odolai River Valley Eco Center, which is, they're just beginning. They're looking for investors and people who want to join them in Portugal. I haven't got to visit yet myself, but I know some people have through the Freedom Cell Network. Peter is based out there. He's a long-term member of the Worldwide Freedom Cell Network. You can find them listed on our webpage if you go to thegreaterreset.org/sponsors. If you're curious about learning more about the people who have helped make this happen, you can find their links and learn more there. So the next presenter is going to be our first virtual presenter for today. She's coming to us, I believe, from Italy, and she's done a lot of work in Costa Rica. She's involved with a number of different projects. I really would probably do a disservice to try to describe all of them, but today she's going to be speaking to us about regenerative herbalism, and she has so much wisdom and so much knowledge to share. Just a really beautiful, empowering woman in so many ways. So please welcome to our virtual stage, Sarah Wu. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Derek. How are you? How's the sound?
Make sure we get her audio. Got it? All right. Hey, Sarah, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? How's the sound?
Are you there?
I can hear myself.
Cool. Let's bring her audio. Whoop. 1 second, Sarah.
Sure.
Make sure we got your audio. Good.
How's the sound? Am I good? I can't hear you guys anymore, so I hope so. All right, so I'm seeing my slides. That feels good. I think we're in the technological flow. And I'm actually coming to you from the low mountains of Costa Rica right now, where I've been living for the past 15 years. And I currently am caring for and living on the lands of the Wetar people, the traditional people who there's less than 1,000 of them left in this country. There's so many effects in this world right now of our human decisions. And this is one of the great powers that we have right now, is to create decisions, to act on our decisions, and to respond to the change that's happening in the world. And so many of you, I'm sure, have heard of permaculture, or you're studying permaculture, or you've been in it for a while. And I want to remind us of the 12th principle of permaculture, which is one of my favorites, which is creatively use and respond to change. And I add to that, there's the change that we can affect and the change that we can't. And maybe some of you are feeling quite disheartened. Maybe you're feeling really excited at the same time by the state of the world. And I know I feel this way. And so much of me remembers that while I know I can't affect things on a major global scale, I can affect things in my bioregion. And I feel that this is one of the most empowering things that we can do, is work in our bioregions. And so my work as an herbalist is dominantly in my bioregion, but also very much with other folks globally as well. Because of the nature of where I live, I have a lot of international students. And so I'm here to share with you today the concept of regenerative herbalism and what that means. So we can move on to the next slide. And what are our learning objectives? But to understand not only philosophical foundations of permaculture, but really looking at the ethics and the principles through the lens of the herbalist. And what is our role as herbalists in not only the ecosystem, but also in cultural regeneration? Next slide, please. And you'll have access to this later. I'm not going to sit here and read everything off to you because you're probably already studying or know something about permaculture. But what I really see for myself in practicing permaculture for the past 15 years, I'm also I teach PDCs and all kinds of different permaculture-inspired courses. But I've been an herbalist for the past 24 years, and for me, they parallel each other almost perfectly, in that we are striving to work with ecosystems. We're looking at whole humans. We're looking at whole humans in relationship to whole landscapes and whole bioregions, and really looking to this concept of interdependence, or what we could also say is mutualistic co-arising. You know, it's like if I'm thriving, then I hope that the others are thriving along with me. If you're suffering, I'm suffering, just by way of the nature of suffering organisms in my ecosystem reflects and affects me completely. And so it's a very holistic perspective on the nature, the nature of wellness and the nature of ecosystem health and human, and sovereignty, but also human interdependence on the land. And too often I hear people say nature is outside of us, when we are exactly a thread on that entire tapestry of life, and from the anthropocentric perspective, humans are at the top. But really, we have to see us more like this, completely interwoven, and this is a part of my job, my goal, I feel. Oh, I'm coming through a little low. Okay, I'm going to speak up. I feel like this is a part of my goal, or my job, is to help to bring people back closer to the land and to remember who they are and where they come from. And also, as someone who practices animistic spiritualism and witchcraft, I really believe in everything is alive and everything has a destiny and a way to fulfill itself. So next slide, please. I hope you can hear me better. So the brief history of permaculture, I'm just going to shoot through it super fast because I don't have a lot of time. But remember, permaculture was born out of the industrialization of the world after World War II. This was a time when everything became mechanized. This was a time when, people went to, women especially, were brought into the workforce. This is a time when humans started living quite easily in many ways. When you look at, previous generations and civilizations and, how hard it was. This was a time when we had access to food globally. This was a time when we had access to clean water. And this is a time when there was a lot of handshakes made non-consensually for us behind closed doors. And these non-consensual handshakes took resources away from local bioregions and they sent them out across the world, and they set rates for the cost of life. And the value of life being the pound of beef or the kilo of beef or, the cost of beans or the cost of oil or minerals or clothing or human life. And what is that value? And this really happened all throughout the 60s when this was happening, and this awakening that humans were starting to have. And of course, into the 70s and 80s, we see this rampant individualism, capitalism, and just consumption going crazy. I'm a teenager of the 90s, maybe some of you are teenagers of the 90s out there, and I really think that this was a time when disillusionment and cynicism and our feeling of just being completely corrupted by the system becomes so prevalent in us. And this is also the time of the tech boom and the time of information rapidly spreading. And so permaculture, being born into the 60s, right, was responding also to this. And we know that the Mullinsonian permaculture was very white man, cisgendered, power over in some ways perspectives that was really rooted in the biology of the ecosystem, creating regenerative human settlements, but he didn't take into consideration the effect on humankind. And this is where I really look to people like Starhawk, and we can go to the next slide, and some other, leaders in the permaculture movement who, next slide please, who really, brought the social aspect in. As we continued on our timeline, how permaculture has evolved, as we see the economic crisis of the early 2000s, as well as just obvious healthcare crisis, so directly linked to our food system. We also see kind of this rise in wellness coming in and community interest. People starting to talk about community in a way that was, not just this back to the land kind of hippie commune style, but really what does it mean to be in community? And we start to see, I was in the health food industry for many, many years, and we start to see all these different fads and the things that Oprah would promote, or this celebrity would promote, or, Beyonce doing hashtag, vegan type of a thing. And so a lot of wellness fads and polarization also in health and wellness and what that even means to us to be healthy human beings in relationship with land. But at the same time, the healthy human being through wellness fads doesn't even consider land very much. It considers things like nutrient content, like the ORAC value of that antioxidant, and considers, the amount of essential fatty acids and optimizing and health hacks and all these types of things. But what is lacking here is the health of the farmer. What is lacking here is that organic food is still a monocrop. What is happening here, that organic food or superfoods are being taken out of the hands of the folks who have traditionally worked with these foods, because they're going to make more money selling that than they are going to make, growing their subsistence crops, and then shipped around the world. It's still this globalized system. And so now in the 2020s, where we are right now, our raging 20s of our own, we see that there's these even greater gaps, in our social inequality, and that the people at the top are just getting closer and closer and closer and closer, higher up into the top, and so many more folks are suffering. And because of this informational age, we're actually able to see it happening. And this has, double edge in that it allows us to see what's happening, but it also allows us to shut down and to turn the channel and to not want to face it, and to become cynical and to become, dispassionate or apathetic. And one of the strengths of our tech and being able to see what's happening in the world is this ability to keep nourishing and cultivating compassion within ourselves, and to really take a hard look at all the privilege that we have, and whether it's the privilege of age, of ableism, of your passport, it's the privilege of your education, it's the privilege of the economic system that you were born into. We really need to take a hard look at that, and what does it actually mean to become more equitable. And it's not just about equality, it's about equity, and who needs and who doesn't need, and how do we distribute resources. And this definitely taps into wellness and to herbalism, because, next slide please, so much of our our wellness has become multi-billion-dollar industries and inaccessible for people when plants are plants of the people. And I'm showing you here, yes, like the, kind of two big wigs that really influenced permaculture, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, and we honor them for their philosophies and their beliefs. And we look at the others, the voices heard, that we have really shifted and created this movement of permaculture for us. Next slide, please. And then there's all the voices unheard, all of us sitting in the audience here, all of us working the fields, all of us, tending the sick, all of us holding the hand of our elder, all of us catching babies, all of us like listening, to the people who, hearing the stories of those illiterate, all of us who are carrying, these practices and these beliefs and these relationships from generation to generation to generation, all of those who don't have the amplification of their voice available to them, right? And this is so important to remember, that it's not just these ones that we hold up here in these like sacred bubbles are the ones that are creating all the change, but it is also here, those of us on the ground who are working so hard. And in wellness, the next slide please, this is really important to think about, because we look so often to the folks who are at the top, the folks who have really, the ones whose voice is the biggest, the ones whose voices are heard, who we consider to be authorities in our field. And even that I have a problem with right there, essentially, because I'm very anti-authoritarian. And so to hear somebody like, oh, they're an authority in their field, I'm like, why? How? Did this happen? And of course, maybe you thought I was going to be talking about medicine plants. Maybe you thought I was going to be showing you pictures of, different herbs that are going to, help you with, your nervous system or your respiratory system or whatever it is. But that's actually a pretty shallow ecology way to look at herbalism, because herbalism so much is rooted in deep ecology, which is rooted in deep shifting change, which is rooted in culture, which is rooted in where we come from and where we're potentially going. And I made this this model here, like really thinking of this succession of the forest in social models, specifically through the lens of wellness. And I want to give credit to a group called Permaculture from Australia, who I learned this from. And I've just expanded upon it and added my own layers, as we do, because how much thought is actually original, right? So when we're looking at the succession of the forest, and for those of you who have studied permaculture, you're probably pretty aware of what this means. If you haven't studied the succession of the forest, then this is the natural process of the forest in its rehabilitation or its regeneration phase. And from how it goes from being an open pasture to a whole, old growth forest. And this takes countless generations in order for it to happen, depending on the ecosystem where you are. So we look to our ancestral healers, who are the snags. They're the dead trees standing. They're the ones that are still rooted in the ground, yet they're not alive anymore. They're not photosynthesizing anymore, but they're full of energy. They're full of life. They're actually giving life to other creatures, whether it's through the nutrients that they're decomposing, whether it's through the habitat that they're providing, the shade, the shelter, and everything. And so this is the wisdom of our elders and our ancestor healers. The colonial healers are our pioneer species, the people who leave, right? And we're not looking at colonial healers just as, this imperial conquest, but people who have left their homes. Why have they left their homes? Various reasons. Maybe it was social collapse, economic collapse, environmental collapse. Maybe they were escaping tyranny. Who knows why people leave their homes? There's so many different reasons, but what they do is they bring with them their medicine plants, and they bring with them new ways of working with their ecosystems based on their old traditions. And so we see these as some of the pioneer species in the landscape, or what we call like our weeds. The weeds, the wild ones, the ones that create tons of biomass and tons of seed that are there to help to protect the soil. Sometimes they can feel invasive because they're full sun and they're opportunists, right? They're just taking advantage of the land right now. And it doesn't mean that they're evil. It doesn't mean that they're bad. No plants are this. It's just they are fulfilling this open sun niche, right? After those ancestral healers have been removed, right? When the deforestation comes in and takes it all out, what's the first thing to come in? Are our weeds. And then we see our shrubs and our pioneer trees, the ones that are really resilient, the ones that are like holding the land, the ones that are, kind of creating this shady structure for other plants to grow. And we could look at this as our allopathic doctors. And I'm going to creek off from the river of our conversation because the creeks help to make everything so rich and delicious and full of yummy sediments and other life. But the creek here is that I want to clarify some things for you between Eastern and Western medicine. Take that out of your vocabulary. This East-West divide came from the imperialistic conquest of England, saying this is the center of the world and everything this way is West, everything that way is East, right? Take that out, because Eastern medicine doesn't mean natural and Western medicine doesn't mean, technological or pharmaceutical medicine, because there is pharmaceutical medicine in the East and there is natural or traditional medicine in the West. So try to use words like allopathic medicine or natural medicine or holistic medicine. Allopathic medicine specifically is referring to medicine that is treating a disease with a pharmaceutical. It's reductionist medicine, right? And so these shrubs or these pioneer trees, they're kind of like overpopulating the space. They're really trying to take over the whole thing. They're starting to crowd out the weeds. They're really like spiny and shrubby, and they kind of like, hold it all together in many ways, and they can be really hard to get rid of. And we don't want to get rid of those allopathic doctors. Those allopathic doctors are critical when you are in a severe accident. You fall and break your leg, you go to the hospital and they're going to reset your bone. There are some herbalists who can do that. There are natural doctors, or bush doctors who can do that. Many of us don't have the scope. I don't have the scope of practice to do that as an herbalist. I'm going to take you to the allopathic doctor. You need a EKG on your heart, you go see your allopathic doctor. They have their place. But then things got a little crazy, and this is where monocrops come in. And monocrops is the modern medical system. This is one pill fits all, going to heal everybody. This is one illness that we're going to hyper focus on right now that's causing everybody imbalance. And we're only going to look at through this reduced lens of what might be the problem. We're not going to look at maybe it's food, maybe it's stress, maybe it's your relationship, maybe it's your lack of spiritual connection, maybe it's that, you're a single parent with 2 children and you're struggling to make it and you're trying to figure out how to create a right life for them. Maybe you're someone running for their lives across the border, right? Like, there's so many different situations why people aren't well. And the modern medical system doesn't see that. The modern medical system says, oh, you got a headache? Slap, here's this. Oh, you got cancer? Slap, here's this. And does it really cause healing? Does it really create change in the human body? And so then, keep going into this, we have our naturalized species. And the naturalized species are our modern herbalism elders. And I want to just honor my teachers. My teachers, David Winston, my teachers, Doreen Reggiani, my teacher, Seven Song, my teacher, Miguel, my teacher, Patty, my teachers, Rafa Ocampo, my teachers, Rosemary Gladstar, like so many teachers out there, my teachers of the plants. It's like, these are the elders that came in to, help to bring some healing back to the soil, and they're naturalized. Meaning they came from other places, but they fit in to the need of the ecosystem. They fit in to what is, present and open for them to fit into. For example, mangoes. We're in the tropics. I'm in Costa Rica, you're in Mexico. Or bananas. Where do they come from? Right? Like, one's from India, one's from Malaysia. It's like, they are naturalized, though. You talk to, the campesino, and they say, where's the banana come from? And then be like, that was grown by my grandpa, that variety, and that, da-da-da-da, right? They've got their own history. They've got their own story. They've got their own relationship with land. And these are the naturalized species. These are the echinaceas. These are the chamomile. These are the plants that aren't native to place, but find their niche, and they don't cause harm. And they really help to make the ecosystem diverse and beautiful. And then, of course, where we are now, we have this whole wellness influencing community out there. And I actually see this as organic farming. And remember that organic farming is still a monocrop. Organic farming is not regenerative farming. Organic farming is not permaculture. It just means we're not using pesticides, or we're using minimal amount, government-approved pesticides on our food, and it can still be shipped across the world. This is the wellness influencer community right now, which is, surface level solutions. Yeah, it's better, but is it really like what's giving plants back to the people? Is it really what's giving humans this feeling of, bioregional sovereignty, and this feeling like we know how to take care of ourselves, and I know in my yard which plants are going to help my family, and I know that when someone calls me on the phone asking for help, I'm going to be able to reach out to them. I don't think that that's always the case in a lot of these wellness influencing communities where they're really jumping onto fads and these concepts of like biohacking and stuff, which I kind of hate that term. And then we've got our native species and our endangered species. And these species are BIPOC healers. These are our Black, Indigenous, people of color, the people who've been with the land, who've been carrying their, and also us white folk or white passing folk, who've been carrying our medicine from our grannies and from our grannies' grannies and from our grannies' grannies' grannies, right? And we're really like carrying this medicine and trying to keep it alive. And we're trying to get it into, you know, the hands of our babies. And we're trying to teach people in our ecosystems about it. And these are the ones that are deeply rooted into the earth. These are the ones that are calling the pollinators. And I put in here our queer community, our LGBTQIA plus community are the pollinators. They're the ones that are really radically opening us up to thinking different, to looking at life as this evolutionary process that's shifting, and that the stories that we've always been told maybe aren't relevant anymore to the needs of our current society. And so these pollinators, they are out there just like moving it all around, really hybridizing, shifting, changing, and adapting to the needs of the ecosystem. And I put this rain cloud in here with the lightning striking because this is natural phenomenon, right? Or, you know, this is change that's happening, and change is unexpected. Change isn't predictable, you know, like the moon is predictable. Lightning is not predictable. The ocean tides occasionally are predictable, but the hurricane is not, you know, and it's this unpredictability, it's this change that actually forces us to evolve. And so now we are in great places of change. We are in climate change right now. We are, you know, social collapse happening all around us. And this was not predictable. In some ways, maybe we're like, oh, I could see that coming, you know, but how and when it was going to happen is unpredictable. And so the native species, the endangered species, you know, the pioneer species, it's like they're all extremely resilient to shift, and they can adapt. And this is where ideally we're moving into right now through our wellness model. And then I put in here this old growth forest, and this old growth forest is what we're striving for. And the old growth forest is the metaphor of not just the literal old growth forest, but it could be that intact, healthy meadow. It could be the coral reef. It could be grassland, savanna, you know, woodlands with old oaks and these old, you know, grasses in there. It could be so many different things. But the metaphor of the old growth forest is that it is a healthy, circular economic bioregion that is taking care of itself, that doesn't need outside inputs coming from around the globe in order for it to thrive. It means in the old growth forest that every single creature is interconnected to each other and absolutely necessary for the survival of that forest. And with this, our goal here is to create this holistic, biodiverse, bioregional healing traditions. You know, in that humans, plants, animals, we're territorial. You know, these concepts of borders and, you know, edges that say, no, mine and yours, mine and yours. This is what causes the most strife, right, amongst human beings. And so trying to break that down and seeing ourselves more as more like animal, you know, becoming animal again and becoming like fluid in our territories, because plants definitely don't have borders. You know, like they can move in these upper atmosphere of the sky for tens of thousands of kilometers. A seed can travel. You know, like what is native is another big question for me with plants, because our planet is always shifting. And so as far back as our human minds can decipher something as native, it's native. You know, and so this old growth forest is adaptable, it's changeable, and it has received species from all over and has created, you know, this healthy ecosystem for itself. And then I put in here these emergent species. We can see emergent species as being things like our palms, sometimes like our pines, and I put in new cultural paradigm. And what is paradigm, right? But paradigm is an agreed upon belief system. And the paradigm that we're in right now is this power over paradigm of win at all cost, of radical individualism, of, you know, like getting to the top and being like all you can be, and, you know, just making all the money. And then it's a very monocrop perspective, because it's actually annual. It's a short-lived perspective on life. And so this new paradigm that we're trying to create is this one of more animistic, more regenerative, more close to the land, more community-focused, very deeply compassionate, empathetic lifestyle that we're trying to create for ourselves. And I want to say that we might not actually see this in our lifetimes. It's like my work right now, I know I probably won't see the greater result of it. Like looking at the way that things are, being now on the 4th floor of my age bracket, I know, like, okay, like maybe I've got like 30, 40 years to go, like in my lifespan, and what am I going to see? What are you going to see sitting in the audience? What are your children going to see? And it's like, what are we working for? It's like, do we just want to work for monocrops in this annual perspective? Or are we really trying to create life-sustaining systems and systems that are going to help us to thrive? And so, like I know I'm probably not going to see the result of my work, but that doesn't mean I stop. And even when you're feeling really low, and like hopeless and maybe a little nihilistic, like looking at the world, remember, like, this isn't just for me. And as we look back to heal our ancestry, maybe some of you are doing that work, what about our descendants? Do we really need them doing work because we still fucked up? It's like, no, we need to try to go back and we need to try to look forward. And this is a very permaculture perspective because we often say we design beyond our borders. We're considering everything outside of our little world. And what if we actually say, I'm going to design beyond my generation, and I'm going to create something beyond my little existence, my little blip of life here on planet Earth. So it's my whole spiel. Everyone take a nice deep breath in. I can't see you, so I hope you're doing it. But this is our interconnection right now, is that breath of life. And knowing that we're all here in this rhythmic pulse of planet Earth right now. So let's go to the next slide. I don't think I'm going to have time to get into all the ethics and principles, but we'll move a little fast. I think I have about 18 minutes. So what are ethics? And this, for me as an herbalist, is one of the most important components of my practice. Ethics for me is shared value. It's this thread that links us. So it's like we could be across the globe, and I know that if I have a certain belief system and you have a certain belief system, we're actually merging together, and we are connected. We share the same ethics. Ethics cross political boundaries. Ethics can cross cultures. They can cross ethnicities, and they can help us create a common vision, not only of the past, but now and also to come. And this is what we share as permaculturists. This is what we share of people who believe in regenerative philosophy. And our ethics, of course, inform our decisions and our actions. Next slide, please. As an herbalist, some of the ethics that we're always considering, and I think this is probably the bulk of what I'll get into, is this concept of earth care. As herbalists, or as people working in healthcare, there is zero separation between relationship with land and the relationship of the health of the human body. When we're looking in this holistic practice, and I'm sitting with someone, I work as a clinical herbalist and as a community herbalist. That means people call me, people text me all the time asking questions. They send me pictures and they're, where can I get this? What do you think about that, right? And I'm just giving information readily. As a clinical herbalist, it means people make an appointment and they sit there for like 90 minutes or 2 hours going through their whole life story. And I'm trying to seek patterns in them. And some of the deep questions I always ask is, what is your relationship with land? How are you spending time outside? How are you engaging in processes that are maybe degenerative or regenerative? How are we causing harm, right? We're all causing harm. Just by having my tech here, I caused harm, but our impact right now is, we're trying to balance that out, right? And it's not just about our carbon footprint now, it's about our carbon shadow. What is everything that we're touching along the way, or what we call in permaculture embodied energy. And so as herbalists, or people who are into wellness, we cannot separate the health of the land from the health of the people. We are mindful that every single living creature has its right to life. It has its right to fulfill its destiny. Whether its destiny is of speaking at conferences, whether its destiny is farming, whether its destiny is spiritual practice, whether its destiny is, moving through soil like a little earthworm and just breaking down nutrients to leave strata for other organisms to thrive on. That's its destiny. And that is a part of our goal as people working in wellness, as permies, as herbalists, as wellness folks, like whoever you want to identify yourself as. The large part of our goal is to be mindful of all living things and to really take that hard look at our impact and how we are consuming and what our consumption means along the entire supply chain. So many herbalists don't think about this. They're buying bottles, they're buying little plastic things, they're ordering herbs from super far, they're sitting in there in their practice recommending herbs that are coming from across the globe when there might actually be something in their ecosystem, that they could work with right there. And so we need to really expand ourselves as herbalists to know that being an herbalist is inherently environmental and is inherently political as well. So next slide, please. People care. I'm showing you all my own pictures right now of students and some of the work we did. This was relief work that we did in Guatemala after the Volcán de Fuego exploded a few years ago. And so many people were displaced. And as herbalists, we do have a really amazing role in relief care and in some like first responders, if you have that training. So in social permaculture is what people care is really, and this is where we just give so much gratitude to folks like Starhawk for bringing permaculture into the social realm, for bringing permaculture into community, for bringing permaculture into social activism, for bringing permaculture into restorative justice. I really pat that human on the back for her critical thinking of permaculture. I'm sure there's other folks that I'm not informed about who have also, helped with this movement. So people care is our healthy social structures, it's schools, affordable housing, obviously. But as herbalists, it is, or as people working in wellness, this aspect is also about the fairness and the accessibility of healthcare to humans. For those of us who maybe come from, the US healthcare system, who means like, I might not be able to afford it. Like, I don't know if I can afford to get well, or if I do go try to get well, I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. Or you're sitting in front of a doctor for 15 minutes being like, human-splained, man-splained, or even woman-splained about, your choices that you're making, and then not actually being given any choice, just being, here is this, what I tell you to do. It's a very power over system. And then the other aspects of an herbalist with social permaculture is looking at, our rights, even. For right now, for any of you Canadians out there, Canada just passed a really big mandate to shut down essentially every single herbalist, charging them or fining them up to 75,000 Canadian dollars, and then mandating them pay 40,000 annual dollars, Canadian dollars a year, just to be in operation. And for those of you who are working as herbalists, you know that we're not quote unquote ballers, like we're not out there like really rolling in it, and so this essentially is shutting down folk medicine, and folk medicine is medicine of the people. And so part of the thing that we're also thinking about in social permaculture is creating like right livelihood, and of course this is a Buddhist philosophy that is like, how do we create a lifestyle or profession that's rewarding, healthy, connected, and just? And as people working with the land, farmers, medicine people, herbalists, healthcare workers, social workers, all these folks, it's like they're doing so much service to other human beings, and so often the ones who are least rewarded. And so of course this comes back to the concepts of social equity and resource equity and equality. Next slide, please. And then fair share. Fair share very much leads into this. And in the original writings, they said that fair share was called setting limits yields abundance. And this plays into so many different things, from the limits on our resource consumption, allowing it, to be distributed around, to information hoarding, or, intellectualism, and, not letting things get out there. But also fair share is very much with working with alternative economics and local economics. And so in wellness, this is really important. Some of the ways that I operate with this, because obviously we have, to create a lifestyle for ourselves or a livelihood for ourselves, we've got to buy food and pay your cell phone bill and take care of all the things that default world asks of us. But really, I operate on a sliding scale and really give a lot, and also ask that if people have economic abundance, to support. And so, sometimes it can fall into hustling mentality a little bit, but it is a part of the reality that we operate in. When I see, many $1,000 ayahuasca retreats or healthcare programs where people are, being pushed into buying 25 different supplements and following, this intense program, and I find that that's actually very, very capitalistic and very extractionist. And I know we're coming super close to the end of time, so let's just go to the next slide quick. And future care, so of course our ancestors and our descendants. Here's me, I teach women, little girls, little uterus carriers about their moon cycle. So really it's like about considering our impact, and how are we bringing this information to the future, and how are we honoring where it came from is some of the biggest things. So it's always like honoring your teachers, and then open source sharing our information. Like, we can't be hoarding the knowledge that we have. Next slide, please. Okay, and we can just kind of slowly go through the slides, and you'll have access to this, I think. So I go through, definitely, if you want to see the class. I do have an online class, as well as classes in person, where this one, the slide presentation I'm showing you, is from the Regenerative Herbalism Foundations class that you can find on my website. I go through all the different key concepts in permaculture, and definitely dive deep into the ethics and the principles. I do teach in person. I have a medicine making apprenticeship coming up at the end of March, and then I also teach a longer course called Permaculture for the Herbalist Path, which is a 200-hour training in permaculture and herbalism, and I host that every year in Guatemala. And it's a really beautiful course because it's supporting Mayan cooperatives, women's cooperatives are the people who are hosting us. And so, I'm very much passionate about economic transparency and prosperity for different folks. So if you're curious, I really encourage you to check out my website. It's villagewitch.org. And I'm Sarah Wu, and I want to thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me here and for listening. And I hope you felt inspired and perhaps a little triggered by this conversation. It's only the only way we can grow.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. There's a big round of applause here in Mexico for you. Thank you so much for sharing that knowledge. All right, everybody, one more round of applause for Sarah Wu. Find her at villagewitch.org if you want to follow her courses and classes. Lots of knowledge, and as you saw there, and as she mentioned, we are going to be making the PDFs, the presentations, available. As you guys know, every year we do our best to get the talks out as soon as possible, and for the speakers who are providing their PDFs, we are going to make those available too, because there was quite a bit of information that we didn't get to today, and I want to make sure you guys get that. All right, we're going to continue on with our next speaker, going back to here in person in Morelia, Mexico. How's everybody feeling? You still awake? It's almost lunchtime, and we hope everybody at home is enjoying the presentations as well. Our next presenter, well, I want to say this. This is another one of our friends from Houston, and for those of you who know that I live in Houston and Morelia, Houston's my original hometown. We got friends here from Houston, Hakeem's from Houston, Miriam, Myra, we're all from Houston. We're representing hard here. Texas is, we're actually doing the steps that we're talking about. So, yeah, we got more folks from Houston there as well. So I'm really proud to bring Sean Hawkins up in a moment, because for those who are familiar with Freedom Cells, you'll be hearing more about that tomorrow. He's part of the Houston Freedom Cell that we started back originally in 2016, and just a really great example of somebody who has embraced the idea of decentralization, localization, and particularly how are we going to grow our own food locally, and how are we going to take care of ourselves. And today he's going to be talking to us about lots of fun mushroom things. So please welcome Sean Hawkins to the stage.
Hi, how's it going? This is great. I'm really excited to be here. Last time I was in Bastrop, and last time I was in Bastrop. Today I'm very excited to be here in Mexico. This is a beautiful town, very unique. Yeah, that one's better. I like to walk around. You're good. Perfect. I'm not usually a fan of microphones. I'm not usually a fan of microphones. I like to talk with my hands a little bit, so holding something's kind of strange to me, and I like to walk around some too, so. All right, my name is Sean Hawkins. I'm a natural farmer. Student and teacher of regenerative agriculture. I grow mushrooms, collect seeds, ferment things, and I guess now I can say international speaker. So, awesome. Thank you. If you want to start the first video. Start the underground. No?
So we Each day when the sun rises, it bathes the earth in photons of light energy. Plants capture this energy, combine it with CO2 and water, creating simple sugars, converting the sun's rays into a physical molecule. This converted carbon and light is used to make stems, leaves, fruits, bark, and power all the necessary metabolic functions for its life. But 70% of this sugar is moved underground, down into the root system, where it's secreted as exudates to feed the fungal and bacterial life in the soil. In exchange for this food source provided by the plant, these microbes return nutrients, water, and protection from pathogens, while also decomposing dead organic matter to be recycled back into the system. They are the end, but they're also a new beginning. These fungal and bacterial bodies attract, support, and feed a web of higher, more complex life forms, speeding up this nutrient recycling system, making all the components available that the plant needs for complete genetic expression. These microorganisms are the base foundational structure of all life on Earth. They are responsible for holding up our entire food chain, and we must move forward with their presence in mind. A single teaspoon of healthy soil contains more microbes than we have people on the planet. This never-ending dance of life and death is how new soil is created, and without this process, we would not be here today. Fungal strands grow, branch, and rebranch in every direction to form a three-dimensional web called a mycelium network, binding the soil together, preventing erosion while retaining water and nutrients inside their cell walls. This network can span hundreds of miles and functions much like the internet when they form symbiotic relationships with nearby plants. But instead of sending ones and zeros, they use this fungus much like our brain neurons, creating chemical signals to communicate with other plants, trading nutrients back and forth, and relaying warning information in the event of pest or pathogen attack, signaling to its kin to activate its immune system and start creating its own defenses. This fungal network is also used as a microbial superhighway, allowing bacteria to use its pathways inside and out to move across vast distances, transporting vital water and nutrients directly where they are needed in this shared fungal community. For the first time in human history, we have begun to understand this universe that dwells below our feet, and we are just scratching the surface. An endless void of knowledge awaits those who wish to travel the path of understanding our partnership with Mother Earth. This is life. This is nature, an infinite symphony of wonder and magic that connects us all.
It doesn't matter how many times I watch that, I get chills every single time. You know, for a long time, little echo. For a long time, you know, this was just in my head. You read all the books and you kind of visualize it. And then when I saw that documentary, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I can now bring this to everyone else and show everyone how all this works in a very concise, precise manner. I think understanding what's happening is a big part of how we move forward. Understanding how these microorganisms work in the soil so that you can have these conversations with other people whenever they start talking about tillage or chemicals or pesticides and things like that. You have a deeper understanding. So. My name is Sean Hawkins. I have started a company called Cultivated Mind. I do mushroom supplements. I grow all of them on site. And yeah, I'm trying to heal the world. I've been on quite the journey to get here. We are on a winding path with many forks and detours. Be sure to read the signs. This is my lovely wife, Jen. She and I have been on a path of healing for the last year or two, and she's given me permission to tell this story. But she was in a really terrible relationship before she met me. Very abusive and very controlling, and it caused her a lot of mental anguish. She started to go see a psychiatrist, and this psychiatrist prescribed her a pill, and that gave her side effects, and prescribed her another pill. And as it went on and had these conversations with the psychiatrist, maybe 30 minutes, hey, let's give her another pill, and by the end of it, she was on 9 different antidepressants, SSRIs, and rescue drugs. Over the course of the first year when I met her, we had to make some drastic changes, and it was quite the fight. But through a change of diet, a change of environment, and some mushroom supplements that I created, she is now completely free of all pharmaceuticals. It's so wonderful to be able to bring this, to be able to see it firsthand. I have some other stories of some other family members and stuff that kind of wish to be anonymous, but I have seen the healing power of diet and environment, and in this case, which I had the medicine available to me as mushrooms. I do believe our food is medicine. We have sort of taken that medicine away from our food in the process. And I think that we should look at that real quick. It's important to look at the bad things. Every mental advance of man arises from the suffering of the soul. Embrace your grief, for there your soul will grow. You know, it is really the part of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. We have to look at the bad so that we can actually experience the good, for we won't know what the good is. The nutritional density of crops has declined by over 80% since the start of chemical agriculture. Almost 100 years ago, whenever World War II ended, we had this huge influx of ammonium nitrate, and it was just sitting in stockpiles. So we started to put it on the soil, and we get this huge boom of growth. Of course, you add nitrogen to the soil, you're going to get cell growth. It's going to be very weak, supple cell growth, but it's going to grow. And we have definitely seen the detriment of using these things over time. It has led to a massive epidemic of leaky gut syndrome. And look at that number one cause on there. The standard American diet, or SAD, as I like to call it. This has a huge downstream effect and has led to an epidemic of diseases. And if you notice there, it also says stress and emotional trauma. So you can actually affect your gut biome by your trauma. Our mental powers are very, very powerful. They can control many things in our bodies. And if we're in the wrong mind state, then our bodies will be in the wrong state as well. Especially over the last 20 years when we started adding glyphosate to our soils, we've had an exponential rise in autism and an exponential rise in many different types of diseases, from Crohn's to diabetes to, pretty much anything across the board. Cancers, everything is really being exponentially expanded due to our inputs, you know, we think that we can take something and isolate it and we can make it better. You know, science. You know, science has gotten us to the point where we're at now. And I love science. I love technology. I think that it can be used in a beneficial way, in a benevolent way. And these types of connections, these types of groups, I think are going to be the ones that do it. We're going to go out there and we're going to share this information, and we're going to teach other people who are just kind of on the fence. And it's going to be a beautiful thing. Now, the next slide, it's going to be a little weird. I truly believe that this unhealthy gut biome has led to our unhealthy minds, and it has led to the drastic political divide that we're experiencing right now. I remember a time when Republicans and Democrats could talk to each other with no problems. I mean, you get the occasional little thing that you sort of have a disagreement about, but there weren't divides in our family, divides in our friends. We were able to actually communicate and talk to each other. The body and the mind are not separate. What affects one affects the other. The degradation of our bodies has led to the degradation of our minds. And this is now being proven by science, some benevolent science, I believe. It's led to the discovery of our gut-brain axis. There is direct correlations between the lining of our guts and the linings of our brains. And when we don't take care of our gut biomes, we end up putting things into our brains that lead to mental disabilities and mental disorders. You can see right there across the top, it says this leads to depression-related psychological changes in the brain. So, if you look over on the picture with the gentleman with the brain, we have some solutions, actually. Diet being number one. We change our diet, we will change the health of our gut biomes. You know, especially in America, we have a lot of sugar and preservatives and all kinds of, you know, isolates to make a safe food. You know, our safe food process, while with a general health in mind to not make someone sick, in turn has created over time long-term detriments that you don't notice, because when a company gets sued, they get sued whenever someone is hurt immediately, but they don't get sued whenever that damage happens over the course of time, because you can't pinpoint one specific thing. So let's bring it on out of the trenches and let's find some answers. The complete genetic expression of our food. In order to achieve this, plants need microorganisms. With our chemical ag, we can complete the two bottom stages of this pyramid to have our plants complete their reproduction cycles. This is all that they need to technically live. And this is where we're at right now. And we are missing the top two parts of this health. And those top two require microorganisms. They cannot be achieved without the help of fungus and bacteria. These secondary metabolites that plants create whenever they are at their healthiest peak are what truly become the medicine in our food. And we wouldn't need to take a bunch of supplements. We wouldn't need to be going to the doctor all the time. Oh yes, and another great thing about this. Once you achieve this, you will never have to spray for bugs or diseases in your plants, ever. They will be able to heal themselves. They have the abilities, they have the compounds inside their cells to be able to fight off insects. Whenever a plant can properly take up enough calcium and it gets in between the cell walls and mixes with pectin, the bug will come along, take a bite, get this big old mouth full of pectate, and it spits it out, and it's like, I do not like this plant, I'm gonna go somewhere else. So The key to all this is biology. Our fertility is directly tied to the biology in the soil. There's a downstream effect that leads from the microbes to our plants, to our animals, to our bodies. And when we take care of this soil biology, we will take care of ourselves. The soil food web, what you saw in that video, is very intricate and detailed and complicated, and there are so many things going on that we can barely even study it. Trying to study something under a microscope, that when you start to understand the way that a slide works, and you put a drop of water onto a slide and you put that underneath the microscope and you start to focus in, you'll notice that you can focus inside this little tiny drop and it becomes like this big. This is how deep your slide is whenever you put a drop of water on there. It's like this big. Can you imagine how much is going on in the soil if I can only look at one drop at a time? And in fact, y'all want to do a group activity? The answer is yes. So I'm going to do something, and I want you guys to follow along with me real quick. I'm going to hum, and I want you to try to match my tune for as long as possible. Okay? Did you feel that? This is what's happening in the soil when it's thriving. It is in synchronicity, and it develops what's called quorum sensing, when they really activate themselves and they start producing all their secondary metabolites because they are in a kind of a dangerous situation. They form relationships with each other. They also form little conglomerates to fight off pathogens. They change the function of pathogens that go from disease-related to beneficial. Something that would normally destroy and eat your plant can still be in the soil, but it will no longer attack the plant because of the presence of the other microbes. It cannot even get to the plant. It will go off and find a rock somewhere and chew on the rock instead. So this killing things, this taking out disease is not the answer. We need as many different microorganisms in the soil as we possibly can provide, because even those pathogens, when they are destroyed and eaten, become data for the other microbes to use in their fight against them. Just like our DNA, whenever we suffer a disease or something and our body cures ourselves of that disease, it remembers it. It encodes it into our DNA, and the next time that we run into that disease, it's really not that big of a problem. And we fix our soil with indigenous microorganisms. We take wild fungal collections from the forest, or we take bacterial collections from healthy parts of our soil, and then we introduce them into our farms. We can take the power of the forest, a healthy area, and we can introduce it into our forest, just like you can do with your gut biome. One of those things on there that I mentioned that were helpful for our gut biome is called FMT, or fecal matter transplant. It's a little gross, I know. But we take the fecal matter from a healthy person and we put it into a capsule or a suppository and we give it to a sick person that has gut issues. Those gut issues will be cured by the healthy person's gut biome. It has been revolutionary, and this is happening on a grand scale now, especially in Japan and the Asian countries. They are finding great success with FNT transplants. I'm also going to be doing a workshop on how to make these microorganism collections. I don't really have time right now to go through all the recipes, but at 6 o'clock, there's like a 15-minute walk over to the other venue. I'll be out here and I'll direct people if you would like to go, and I will show you the recipes on how to take these collections, grow them out, and apply them in your farm. So if you guys want to join us, that's where I'll be. This information is designed for educational purposes only and is not provided as a professional service or medical advice for specific patients. It is not a substitute for professional medical care. And if you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. I know I have to do that. It's unfortunate, but you know, let's keep us all legal here. Fungus as food. I've now been growing mushrooms for a couple of years. Of course, studying Korean natural farming, studying Jadam, and natural farming has led to this. It has been a great help in growing mushrooms, actually. And I didn't realize that the procedures I was doing in natural farming would relate so closely to mushrooms. It's been a wonderful journey. It has been a very quick and stressful journey, but I'm so glad to be here. I think that the universe tests you to see if you really want something, and if you can push through that test, push through that stress, and get to that beautiful goal at the end, it is so worth it. Again, so we got lion's mane. I grow a lot of lion's mane. There are some in vitro studies showing that lion's mane actually regrows neurons in your brain. There is a neuroplasticity about the brain where it actually can heal itself. You know, when I was a kid, someone told me that you know, they used to do, kids would like turn their faces real red, you know, whenever they're mad or something, and they're like, oh, you're killing brain cells, and they'll never come back. We can get those brain cells to come back. Of course, the faced red kids is probably not that healthy either. These mushrooms are choice and delicious, and they also have wonderful immune benefits. Shiitake has an increased immune function. It has a lot of vitamin D. It has high protein profile. Mushrooms, if you're a vegan and you need more protein in your diet, mushrooms are an excellent way to do it. The average, I think, is about 16% protein, and I'm now hearing of companies that are producing mushrooms up to 35% protein. That's wild. I mean, you're talking about the same amount as meat or more. So, and maitake is delicious. It actually grows wild where I'm at. Tastes like chicken a little bit. And that actually causes what's called an immunomodulation. Instead of just giving you an immune boost, which is not great for everyone, you can have a hyperactive immune system, it actually will either do both. It will give you an immune boost, or it will give you an immune suppression if you need it and put you into homeostasis. You don't, we have this thing in America especially where it's like more, more, more. Well, how about balanced? How about the correct amount? And if you would like to snap a picture of these steps here, I'm going to show a video here in a second about how to grow your own mushrooms at home. It's really simple and easy, and I think everyone should have access to this. If you have wood logs on your property, you can grow mushrooms. Preferably hardwood. I like to use oak, but any type of hardwood will do. So you can find yourself a fresh cut hardwood log, preferably cut in December or January, or in the winter months at least, because the tree will take all of its energy and store it into the trunks instead of trying to produce fruits and leaves where that's all its energy will go. So if you cut it in the middle of its budding phase, you might not get as good of a mushroom flush from it. So once you have your log, you will then do this. Please play the log video. You'll need a drill, and
We have cut this down in December, been a couple of weeks, and now we're ready to inoculate with our dowel rods. These dowel rods have a fungus growing on them. This is a reishi, and we're going to be using this today to inoculate our logs. You could technically use a fresh mushroom depending on the species. Shiitake might not work. Oyster will probably work really good, where you take a fresh mushroom that you find in the forest and you clean it off with some distilled water, and you will end up using that in place of these. Again, your results may vary. These dowel rods are inoculated specifically for log growing. They're very effective. All right. I have a drill here. We put a piece of tape on it so that we don't go too deep on our dowel rods, and we're going to make 4-inch holes, 4-inch spaced holes across the surface of our log. done that, we're going to take our dowel rods, put them in. Now, you will do this on every side of the log. I've already pre-drilled the holes here, but on all 4 sides, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to space the holes about 2 inches over from the one next to it. Got everything sort of shoved in there. It's not going down all the way. Get yourself a hammer, sort of tap them in the rest of the way. All right. Now, we're going to seal each one of these. And the reason you want to seal them is because if you don't, they will dry out, or a bug might get in there, and they might infect our dowel rods. So we're going to take a little bit of wax. I have some unscented candle wax. Cheese wax is really great for this. My little wax melter, and we're just going to seal up each one of these holes so we can keep things from having bug infection and drying issues. All right. In a pinch, you could use petroleum jelly if you don't have anything else, but we do prefer to use wax here. Once you have put your dowel rods in, you've got everything sealed, now's the time to go place your log in a shaded area. This spot gets shade all day, so I'm also going to put this on the ground. That way it does not dry out. You make sure that you keep these logs moist. If they dry out, you're going to start having problems with the fruiting process. So if you live in a dry climate, you might want to come out here and water every week or two. You can soak them by putting them into some water for maybe 30-45 minutes, or you can put a sprinkler on them for a couple of hours. That first part of their life is kind of vital for their moisture levels. After about 6 months to a year, depending on when you have done this process, you will start to notice mushrooms coming out of your logs. And then we're going to pick our log up and we're going to lean it on something. I want to give it a little more space, a little more air, because if it's on the ground, your mushrooms won't really grow very well on the bottom side. And at this point, you'll be able to harvest mushrooms at home very easily and cheaply. They will produce for about 2 years. If you get the really big logs, they can produce for up to 10 years.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. If you get those big round logs, maybe about 2 foot tall, and inoculate them, they will produce for about 10 years. It's pretty amazing. You can do some long-term sustainable growth with that. And it's more than just sustainable, it is regenerative. I think that we need to go beyond sustainable. We do need to be able to make systems that regenerate and create soil, not just maintain what we have. Because nature can easily do this. This is nature. One of nature's main functions is to create soil. And we really kind of just have to get out of the way. Nature is not broken. There's not something that we try to fix with nature. We came from nature. Nature fixes us. And in this process, I've learned about stacking, mushroom stacking, microbial stacking, food stacking. You want a diverse collection of different inputs. Whenever you're taking mushroom supplements, taking one is fine, but if you combine them with other ones, it's kind of hard to see, but I have a study here. They took turkey tail, maitake, and shiitake, and they discovered that you get a better beneficial reaction from those 3 combined in unison than if you were to take each one individually in even higher doses. So there is a synergy whenever you start combining these things together, because if you go into the forest, it's not homogeneous. There's all kinds of diversity, all kinds of different plants, different trees, different bugs, different leaves. The more that we can get in there, the better. In fact, one of the doctors I listen to, I'm pretty sure you guys know him, Dr. Zach Bush, he has this philosophy philosophy of eating from the rainbow. Whenever you eat, you want as many different colors on your palate as possible, and you can get a general idea that you're getting something that is going to have a well-rounded balance of health. Should what? Sure, sure. You can start. Let's say, for example, whenever I take cordyceps, I don't take cordyceps all the time. I take it maybe every other day because I can get a diminishing effects where I don't feel it the next day. And if you give yourself a little bit of a break, and you can get better responses from it. You're right, because if you start eating something all the time, you're doing it 3 times a day or something, your body gets used to it and it actually starts to kind of combat it because it can be a little bit too much. Again, balance is the key. And that is another reason why I designed my company the way I did and the way that I do my extractions is you only need to take one. It's a very, very tiny, tiny amount. I'm not trying to dump a bunch of capsules down somebody's throat. That's not the way that we should be trying to do this. And in fact, I hope one day that we don't need to take supplements, that we don't need to take any of these things. Unfortunately, at the moment, because the way our food systems are, we're kind of having to supplement. But I think the time is coming pretty quick that we can change that. Oh no, it moved. Oh well. These are the 3 blends that I've come up with. Yes, I know I'm doing a little bit of advertising, sorry. I think they're important to talk about. I have a pre-workout, post-workout with cordyceps. It gives you energy and then it also recovers your muscles. The one that I gave to Jen a lot was the brain, was my brain squared, which is what I call it now. It wasn't called it then, but it's lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, butterfly pea flower, and ashwagandha. These are all nootropics that have a secondary effect of prebiotic or digestive aid properties. So not only is it helping your brain, but it's also helping your gut so that I can hit that gut-brain axis. And again, I do a dual extraction because it's important to get both of these things. If you get just one side of the medicinal compounds, you're only getting 1/2, which brings me to, you should always cook your mushrooms. When you're eating mushrooms, you need to cook them because the medicine is locked inside the cell walls. These cell walls contain chitin. It's a very hard substance that keeps the medicines from coming out. So make sure to cook them. And then I also do an alcohol extraction because the other half of the anti-cancer agents are actually only alcohol or fat soluble. So those do something called apoptosis, where parts of your immune system come in and do individual checks on your cells and tell them to keep going or to destroy themselves and incorporate themselves into your immune system. So when you take these triterpenes, they really help to keep that part of your immune system functioning. One thing I do want to talk about real quick, there are a couple of side effects. If you take chaga too much and you are susceptible to kidney stones, it can increase your risk of kidney stones. Number 2, never take cordyceps if you have a fever or if you have a flu. It will heat up your body. It's an energy producer. So it will make your temperature increase, and if you already have a fever, you're going to make it worse. Number 3, in the immune blend, general immune blend, it's multiple species. I added nattokinase because of the times that we're in. We have damage from the spike protein, and nattokinase is an enzyme from a soy ferment, and Dr. Peter McCullough is a proponent of nattokinase, and this is just the sign of the times. If we are in a different era, it'd be a totally different ingredient. But right now, we need help to rid people of this spike protein. So, how much of my speech were side effects? Should it be like a commercial? Constipation, diarrhea, upset stomach, renal failure, anal bleeding, sudden death, restless leg syndrome. Brought to you by Pfizer. With that being said, let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food, and go forth and grow your own and heal your bodies. Thank you all.
Yes, make some noise for Sean. Houston's repping hard here today. All right, that was a wonderful presentation. Really appreciated that. And that's it for the first part of the morning. We've got lunch coming up for everybody here in person for the next hour and a half. Everybody who's watching at home, please tune back in an hour and a half. We'll be back with more powerful speakers. One announcement for those in person, somebody lost Blue Shocks headphones. If you find those, return them to the gentleman. Raise your hand, brother, right up here in the front. And other than that, we'll see you guys after lunch. Thank you.